Having been in education for 47 years as a teacher, coach, counselor, and administrator, Joseph Levis has retired. He's an award-winning author and uses a psychology and counseling background to craft thriller, crime, detective mysteries. He has taken creative writing and screenwriting courses at UCLA and USC, and his books have won nearly 20 awards. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's a pleasure to have Joseph Levis on the show. How are you doing, Joseph?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you featured on P English Literature.
I was
Yeah,
looking forward to this.
absolutely. So, Joseph, could you tell us about your book, Stolen Lives, which is the first book in the series of Life Trilogy? How does this book come about? I mean, what inspired you to write Stolen Lives?
The book was actually the first book that I had written, and it is based upon my work. When I was a counselor, I was a volunteer for the
Oh,
Wetterling Foundation for stranger abducted and sexually exploited children. And
oh,
my job was to um, teach parents how to protect their kids, teach kids how to protect themselves, and then teach educators and significant adults what to look for, the signs that kids might be abused, things like that. And
mm,
so when my wife and I had our own children, instead of picturing the kids that I was talking about, I would picture my own son and my own daughter. And so I had to take a complete step back. But I always wanted to tell their story. It was important for me to get out in front and speak to this crime that takes place. And so that's how Stolen Lives came about.
oh,
Um, and what happened is the publisher, the first publisher that I had, they said we really want to publish Stolen Lives, but and I'm thinking, oh, they want me to rewrite it like crazy and all that other good stuff.
mm,
And what she said was, we want two things. First thing is we want you to put it in a series. And so this is the first book, Stolen Lives. Shattered Lives is the second book,
second.
and then Splintered Lives is the third book. And then she said, "Can you write a prequel to introduce the reader to the series?" And so that's how Taking Lives came about. So what I did
Oh,
is, having written Stolen Lives first, I merely backed up 2 years previous to the timeline in Stolen Lives for Taking Lives. And I ended it purposely on a cliffhanger, as that I wanted the reader to jump right into Stolen Lives.
mm,
So Stolen Lives talks about the kids that were taken, abducted, and nobody knows where they are, although the FBI has found dead bodies scattered throughout the United States.
mm.
And the book is about bringing those kids back home alive.
Oh,
That's what that book is about. The second book, Shattered Lives, um, there were six very bad men that get away. But more important, I wanted to write about what happens when we bring these kids home safely, because 41% of missing kids in the United States are still missing. 27% are only found dead. The
wow.
rest of them, we're actually able to bring them home. Now,
Mm.
these were FBI statistics that were accurate in about late 1980s. And so I'm sure that they have changed since then. So, what Shattered Lives is about, it's looking at the kids who we bring home safely, that we get them out of captivity and Stolen Lives. And what are their lives like? How do they assimilate back into their families, their friends, going to school, all those things that are really important. Plus, we have six very bad men that are still after some of these kids. And so that's really the thriller aspect behind Shattered Lives. And then Splintered Lives ties it all together and ends the series.
Wow. That sounds very amazing. I love the sound of the book series. It sounds very great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Then you
I've been getting real positive feedback.
sure.
On Goodreads, those four books are deeply into the fours out of five.
Wow.
So the ratings and the reviews on them have been really amazing. So I've been
Yeah.
really
Yeah, I saw some on Amazon too. I was really impressed with it.
thank
Then
you.
yeah, then you also have Shattered Lives, which is a
Yes.
second book in the Lives trilogy series. Picking from the first series and without giving much information away, could you tell us about the making of Shattered Lives?
Well, like I said, the publisher wanted me to create a series. And so what I did was I have Stolen Lives, Shattered Lives, and Splintered Lives. And the story behind Shattered Lives is now the kids are safe. At least the FBI and their families think
Mm.
they're safe.
Oh,
But there are some bad men out there that some of them are in jeopardy. The
oh,
kids are in jeopardy. And the other thing is, like I said, it's looking at the kids who were in captivity and how are they assimilating back into their family unit with their
mm,
friends and things like that. Some of them go just fine. Others are going to struggle, especially with what the kids went through in captivity. And
mm.
so so it's exploring those issues in that book.
Wow. Wow, that's great. I love the sound of that. And now,
Mhm.
Joseph, I want to ask you, as authors, we all have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and criticism of our works. I'm curious
Mhm.
to know your opinion about criticism. How do you react to negative criticism of your books if you've ever had one in time past?
Not well. Um, I think with
Well,
human nature, you get 10 reviews
hmm,
and nine of them are very positive. They're very good. It sounds really great.
yeah.
And you get that one really negative one. And I think as humans, we tend to focus on that one bad thing, and I think that's kind of how I react. And I know that
Oh,
I'm getting better. That's for
oh,
sure. But I used to do this with teachers when I was a principal. I would have a clean white board and I'd put a black dot in the middle of it. And I'd have the teachers describe what they look at. All of them, all of them mentioned the black dot. And I said, and what my teaching point was, none of you talked about the quality of the whiteboard. None of you talked about the expanse of the whiteboard, but you look at that one minuscule black dot. And I think that's human nature. We tend to look at the negative as opposed to focusing on the positive.
mm, absolutely. That's great. That's great. I love the sound of that. Sound very intriguing to me. Now, could you tell us about your other book? You have a book titled Caught in a Web. Would you love to tell us a bit about that as well?
Yeah, Caught in a Web is the first of what I would call
Good
standalones.
cover.
Um, but the thing with Caught in a Web in all of my books, I take the same characters and I move them forward into each book.
Mm,
So in Taking Lives, I introduced three characters. I introduced George, who's a Navajo Indian, his grandfather, and Brett. Those are the three characters, and you're going to find them in all of my books. And then with Caught in a Web, um, the focus, let me back up. When I write a thriller, it's not
yeah.
just bullets and car chases and things like that. Because I'm dealing with kids, and I've dealt with kids for 47 years. What I write is a strong, what I would say, coming of age thread in each of my mysteries, each of my thrillers.
Mm,
And Caught in a Web, in any high school in the United States, I'm sure in Nigeria,
Nigeria.
there are pockets and places where there's drug use and death associated with drug use and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, I dealt with it as a principal. I dealt with it as a
Wow.
counselor. And one morning, I was reading the newspaper, and it was talking about the rise of deaths in teenage kids using fentanyl and heroin mix, which are two really highly powerful depressants. And just one um, mainline it, or if you take a pill, you can die just by one use. And so I was reading about that, and then a couple pages later, there's a gang in the United States. It's actually comes from El Salvador. It's called MS-13, very violent, brutal gang. And what I decided to do is combine in Cotton Web to combine the drug use and the deaths that occur from that and wrap it into the gang MS-13. And so that's how caught the web is. It's a mystery who is selling the drugs. MS-13 doesn't like the fact that someone is cutting in on their territory. They send what is an enforcer
Mm.
to Wisconsin in this city that's outside Milwaukee to put a stop to it and make sure that nobody cuts in on their business anymore.
Oh,
Um, and so then what happens is there's an ulterior motive, which is kind of the suspense and the thriller, in that one of the boys is targeted out of revenge. And
mm.
he's not associated with drugs, he's not associated with a gang. And so he finds himself and his family and law enforcement find that he is now at threat.
Wow. Wow. That sounds very pulling. I never wanted you to stop telling the story.
Yeah.
It's very pulling. I'm
Yeah.
already engrossed with it. But I
Oh,
later
great.
realized that this is an interview, not to give everything away.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And now, Joseph, considering the level of the books you've authored so far, I'm curious to know if you experienced any challenges while writing your books. If there is any, could you share with us what challenge it is and how you ultimately overcame it?
Yeah, there are some challenges with writing. For I'm a dad, I'm a
Mm,
husband, and so you have the time constraint. I had a day job, being a principal. When the first book came out, I was a principal, so you have a lot of day activities, you have night activities, and so it's the challenge was me carving out the time necessary to be able to sit down with my laptop
mm.
and create a story. That
Oh,
was that was a challenge. And then once it's written, trying to find someone who would publish it, because I'm not self-published. I have a publisher, Black Rose Writing. Um, they've been kind enough to publish all my books, and it's a matter of sending them the manuscript, and then they have a team that looks at it, and then they decide if they're going to publish it or not. What
mm,
was interesting, it usually takes the process takes almost a month. Once, in fact, when I write a book, from the idea to having the publishing of the book, it's
yeah.
about 9 months to a year. It takes that
Wow.
long. So because you have your first draft, and then you have to edit it, and you have to in some cases you promote it and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's about 9 months to a year from idea to publication. So when I send off a manuscript to Black Rose Writing, it would take about 3 to 4 weeks for them to decide if we want to publish it or not. What
Wow.
was interesting in my last book that came out in March, it's called Fan Mail. It was not even a week, and they got back to me and says, "Yes, we'll publish it." And I think that's because of the track record that I have in my previous book. So I'm
Mm,
really pleased that they trust me and they trust my storytelling, um, and all that good stuff. So I'm very pleased. But the challenge, I think, for most of us, is the time to be
mm.
able to the discipline it takes to sit down at a laptop and get the story out without distraction. Because it's really easy to pick up a cell phone and search for email or search for
Yeah.
on Twitter or the web and all that other good stuff. So
Yeah.
it's that discipline that you need, and then being a dad, being a husband,
Mm,
that's time consuming,
yeah.
gladly time consuming.
Yeah. I see. And that's one of the major challenges that most writers experiences out there. Even
Yes,
myself, finding the time to sit down is quite hard. You just have to squeeze it together to find a
exactly.
place out. Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is what people don't know is they think these writers, you and I and everybody else, are making tons and tons of money. If they only knew, right? Unless in my genre, because it's thriller, mystery, crime,
Yeah.
unless your name is James Patterson or David
Mm.
Baldacci or
Oh,
John Sanford, most
yeah,
of us have day jobs. And so that's going to be
absolutely.
the main source of income. I
Yeah,
think you and I write because we like putting words on paper.
absolutely.
To we like to tell a story, and I think
Yeah.
the general public doesn't realize how much effort it takes, and
Mm.
they automatically think that as soon as you publish a book, you're going to be raking in the money, and it just does not happen.
Wow, that's quite fun to know. Now, I also see, Joseph, that you have another book titled Betrayed. Can you
Yes.
tell us about what inspired that as well?
Um, Betrayed is
Oh,
this is
beautiful
this.
cover.
Thank you. The publisher has a design team that puts everything together, and it looks
Wow.
like it's a western, and it's really not.
Mm.
It's a modern day mystery thriller. It takes
Wow.
place in what is called in the United States, northeastern Arizona, one of the states in the Southwest, Navajo country, where the Navajo Indian live. One
Mm.
of my characters, George, is a full-blooded Navajo Indian, and
Oh,
he gets a late night phone call from his girlfriend, and
wow.
she's an old childhood friend, and she states that her brother is missing. And so now he and two of his brothers decide they're going to go to Arizona and help
Mm.
find his brother. But because mom and dad are involved, they're going to want to make sure that they have some adult help. And so two cops go along and they meet up with an FBI agent. So you have three kids and you have three law enforcement.
Mm.
Two of the boys, Brett and Brian, decide that they're going to do elk hunting. They see this as an opportunity to do some hunting, something that they've not done before with elk. They do deer, they do duck, and all that other good stuff, but not elk.
Wow.
George is busy with his girlfriend trying to find her brother who's missing.
Oh.
Well, then
Oh.
they find out that not only is there a late night phone call and a missing kid, but there's a murdered family. And nobody is willing to talk and give any help the law enforcement or to George or his girlfriend as to who did what. And so what happens is you have a late night phone call, a missing kid, a murdered family, and no one is willing to talk. And that's the story behind Betrayed. And then
Wow.
what happens is um, the two hunters, Brian and Brett, they're 16 years old, 15, late 15, early 16.
Wow.
They find out that the hunters are actually become hunted. And so
Wow.
and they have no idea why or how, and they try to survive that.
Mm.
This book has won about 8 or 9 awards.
Wow.
It was a Maxie Award winner. It was a Pencraft Award winner.
Wow.
Um, it was a runner-up or finalist or something from Maxie. I mean, it's been that's been a powerhouse book.
Wow. Wow, that's very great. And I'm quite excited to know it has won quite a lot of awards. That's some
Yeah,
congratulations on your part.
thank you.
Yeah. Now, so I want to ask you, Joseph, having published 9 books, I'm curious to know if you have any other works you're currently working on. Do you?
Yeah, yes. I actually started this. I took about 2, maybe 3 weeks off before I started. After excuse me, I have a little
Yes,
bit of a cold. After
awesome.
fan mail was accepted and they were busy doing their thing, then I began another story, and it's called "The Evil One."
Oh,
And the Navajo Indian have a term for it. It's called Black Yee. And Black Yee, this translates to the evil one. That's the title of the book, and it is looking at evil and how it impacts life and how it affects this particular family. Again, the same characters in all my books, um, and dealing with that. It's a little bit of a revenge story,
hmm.
and it is. You could actually say it's a sequel of a type to caught in a web because
Mm.
MS-13 is now back in town.
Wow.
At the end of Caught in a Web, um, five characters kept a secret. They made a pact that they would not tell exactly what happened inside the house where there was some murders, there was some killing. And so they decided that they were going to keep the secret. Somebody told the secret, and so now they're not safe. And that's what
Mm.
brings MS-13 back into town.
Wow.
That's what I'm working on. I'm about 51,000 words in
Wow.
it. In writing, you go by words, you don't go by pages.
Yeah.
Um, and in my genre, I aim for about 80 to 85,000 words. So I'm a little bit over half.
Mm. Wow. That's amazing. That's pretty much amazing. And I love the sound of that. Sounds very intriguing to me. Now,
It's going to be a
Jules,
fun one.
absolutely. I can see. I can perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've also written loads of amazing works. This wants me to ask you about your most exciting and challenging experience as a writer, if you ever have one.
I think once the book is done, what's hard for me is the promotion.
Mm.
Getting people to buy it, advertising it, and all that good stuff. And I don't know that I'm the best at it, but I'm doing well enough that my publisher is happy, and as long as they're happy, great. But I think the hardest part of my writing, the challenge, is the promotion of the book once it's done. That's
Mm.
the hard part because it not only is it getting word out there and advertising the book takes away from the actual sitting down and writing the next story. And
Mm.
so you have to kind of balance between promotion and creativity. And so
Yeah.
I think that to me, that's the hardest part about what I do.
Well, wow, I can see it's quite hard promotion. Most people, and that's one of the greatest aspect of books. Once a book is out, the promotion is the main target. Promotion determines how far the book is gonna go, and marketing it's one of those great things that most people are having
Yes,
issues with.
you're right. Unless you have an established name, like I
Yeah,
said, James Patterson or David
celebrity.
Baldacci, you see the title, you see the name, you think, oh, it's going to be a good book. So they go out and buy it.
Yeah.
While I have a fan base and I'm building a fan base, I am nowhere near the level of James
Oh.
Patterson or David Baldacci. So I have to hit the markets and try to sell my books.
Hmm. That's great. That's quite fun to know. Now, is there anything you would love to share with the viewers about your books that we didn't mention in this interview, and you'd love the viewers to know?
I think, there are a couple things. The first thing is, people ask me all the time whenever I'm out doing book signings and things like that. They say, "How do you come up with all these ideas? I mean, you have
Mm,
9 books and you're working on number 10. Where do you get these ideas from?" And I think the writer, first and foremost, they have to be observant. They have to be aware of what's going on around them, to
mm,
notice how people walk, how they talk, what they're dressed like. What is the setting like? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it he's super humid? Is it dry heat? Is it wet heat? Is it raining? How heavy is the rain? And so I
mm.
think what happens is a writer has to be observant. And once you are observant and you start writing, the ideas just come, they just happen. The other thing I think is important for any kind of a writer, if somebody's out there, is that if you write, you have to read because it's very much like weightlifting is to the athlete. The athlete just is not born that way. They have to
Mm.
train. They have to get stronger. They have to get faster. You only do that by getting in the weight room. For the writer, um, I think it's very important for the writer to be able to read and have to read. It gives you the tools to be able to write. So
Mm.
if you're not reading, you're probably not writing very well because you
Wow.
need both to be able to be successful.
Yeah. Wow. I love the sound of that. I really love the sound of that. That sounds very amazing to me. And at this point, I'd love to have your advice on this. As a published author, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing a book? What would you tell people in this category?
I would say don't take no for an answer. There is
Don't
no
take no
such thing
for
as
an
the word
answer.
no. There will be
Hmm,
someone out there that's interested in your story. You just
absolutely.
have to find the right time with the right person.
Yeah.
Stephen King, his very first book was called Carrie. And he actually, and when he wrote it, he was using a typewriter. Can you imagine? It's not a computer anymore, and you have backspace and you have autocorrect and all that other good stuff.
Hmm,
I mean, on a typewriter,
it's
it's
hard.
slow going. Well, what he did is he didn't like the story and he crinkled it up and threw it in the garbage. His
Wow.
wife, his wife Tabitha, pulled it out of the garbage and read it, straightened it out. And when Stephen King got home, he was an English teacher at the time. When he got home, she said, "You need to finish this story because it's a good one." And so she convinced him to pull it out of the trash and write the story. Not only did it become a bestseller, it became a movie once, and
Wow.
then it was remade into another movie. Um,
Wow.
uh, there's all sorts of stories about writers who were rejected. There's an English writer, I'm sorry, an American writer who William Faulkner was rejected 40 some times
Wow.
before somebody decided to publish him. Dr. Seuss, who's a very famous writer for children's books, he was rejected. Nobody was willing to buy him. And I'm sure you've heard of Harry Potter, those movies and things like that.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling was rejected by every major publishing house. And it was Scholastic Books, nobody ever heard of really, that
Mm,
decided, hey, I kind of like this story. And so we're going to publish it. And look where she is now. I mean,
mm.
it's so you can never give up. You
Never
never
give
take
up.
no for an answer. If you
Mm,
believe in your story, you go sell it because somebody will buy it. And
mm.
I think it's important for any writer to not only hear that, but to believe it.
Wow. Love the sound of this. It's very inspiring. With the further you said, never give no to an answer.
No,
Never say
I
no.
I think I could actually wallpaper a small room in my house with all the rejection slips I've gotten.
Wow.
Many of them. It
Wow.
just doesn't happen right now. My publisher likes what I write, and so they're very receptive to it.
Wow.
But it wasn't always like that. I mean, I've got rejection after rejection, um, and so it's you just take no. You cannot take no for an answer. You have to
Mm.
believe in it.
Well, and I also see the need of having a companion, someone to encourage you. Because looking at Stephen King's wife, if she had not pulled it out of the crap, out of the trash, and told him that you need to write this story completely, it wouldn't. Because he already threw it aside the trash.
Yes, exactly.
So
It would have stayed right there.
it
Nobody
will
would
have
have heard
stayed
a
right
care.
there. No one will ever know about it. So there's
Yeah.
need for companion, need for people that will encourage you to push you a
Yes.
bit to where you want to go. So that's very motivating. I'm really inspired with this. Thank you for mentioning
Excellent.
it.
You bet.
That's great. I love the advice, and I'm hopeful the viewers also, including myself, will love to utilize it. So, Joseph, on what platform are your books available on in case we have viewers who would love to get a copy?
It's available on Amazon in both paperback and in Kindle version, the electronic ebook.
Mm,
Most books, that's another thing I think the public doesn't realize is that most books are actually sold as ebooks, the Kindle version.
yeah.
Paperback books are, it's maybe one paperback to every 4 or 5 or 6 ebooks that are sold. And so you have Kindle, Barnes and Noble has a Nook. Those are all available there. Um, and then when I spend quite a bit of time at sales events, signing events, and that's fun for me because I get to meet people. They're looking through my books, they're asking me questions. It's
Mm,
That's great fun for me. So it on Amazon and on Barnes and Noble, they can find my work.
that's amazing. And I left a link in the description part of this interview to Joseph Levis' books links on Amazon and on Barnes& and Noble. So thank you so much, Joseph, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
I appreciate being interviewed. You asked excellent questions. You were very
Yeah.
prepared, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for having me, and I appreciate the viewers for taking the time to watch this.
Yeah, it's my joy. It's my pleasure.